Hi, I'm Cassie and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to be making 3 types of Japanese egg. This is going to take your lunch game up a notch, or at least introduce some variety. We're going to make ramen eggs, TKG, and Tamagoyaki. And if you have no idea what any of those are, then you better keep watching. But if you do know what they are, then at least you'll find out how to make them. Each one of these is great for experimenting because they don't require too many ingredients and they don't require too much time. They're just a great base. So today I'm going to be showing you how to make the most basic and standard versions of each of these, but I really hope that you take those and start experimenting with them, start adding your own flavors to them to make it right for you. So let's see how to make them. Okay, so as we know, the egg is going to play a very important role in each one of these recipes. But here are the individual recipes for you to screenshot now or pause and take notes for later. Okay, have you got all your screenshots? Now it's time to make TKG. TKG stands for Tamago Kake Gohan, which literally means egg on rice. But let's make it a little bit more interesting than that, shall we? We're going to start by cooking up our rice. I'm just doing 1 cup of rice to 1 cup of water. Then we're going to grab our all-important egg and we're going to separate the whites into here and the yolk into here. You'll need to be a bit careful when you crack this so that you don't break the yolk, but don't worry, if you want an even simpler version, then you can just whisk up the whole egg and use that instead. Now I'm going to carefully place my little yolk here, and I'm going to lightly beat the egg whites with my chopsticks. Then I'm going to put that straight onto my hot, fresh rice. The idea here is that the heat of the rice will slightly cook the egg whites. Then we're just going to fluff it up with our chopsticks. Now it's time to add a bit of flavour to this bad boy. So I'm going to do about a tablespoon of soy sauce. My soy sauce bottle is particularly squeaky. Then about 1/4 or 1/2 a teaspoon of oyster sauce. This is very rich, so we don't want to add too much so that it overpowers the dish. Then we're just going to mix and fluff that all up. This is not supposed to be anything fancy. This is just supposed to be like, oh, what is in my kitchen? I have egg, I have rice, I have some seasonings. Okay, let's just put that all together. And you can just mix it all together by putting the egg straight in the rice and then just putting all the seasonings in the bowl like that. That's fine. But for me, I just find that when I do that, then the egg white turns into this weird gloopy thing that I'm just not a fan of. So I lightly whisk it first and then I mix it into the rice first so that it's a little bit more together and the rice just seems a little bit more fluffy.
Now for the fun part. I'm going to lovingly and caringly place my little egg yolk onto my bed of rice. Look at that shiny, shiny yolk. And this makes a great simple meal accompanied by miso soup. Then I'm just going to add some Japanese Ichimi spice and some salt and pepper. And now it's time to break the yolk. Oh god, I'm nervous. Okay, let's go. Oh, look at that. And there you have it, a super simple TKG dinner. This one's a little bit controversial given that it has raw egg in it, so if you are a bit worried then you can just put this in the microwave or put it in a pan and just put it on a very low heat and you'll have a similar thing but the egg will be cooked. So now it's time for our ramen egg. So here's one I made earlier. This one actually ended up with a super weird shape and a crack down the middle. So I looked up how to avoid that and I'm just gonna share that tip with you. And that tip is a push pin. Apparently, by pushing a small hole into the base of your raw egg before boiling it, it makes the inner film come away from the shell, making it easier to peel. Another tip I saw is not to use super fresh eggs because they're harder to peel. I did find this push pin trick a little bit difficult, but by using a little bit more force than I expected, I was able to get the job done. When I'm making boiled eggs, I like to use the ladle to pick up a little bit of hot water and roll the egg around before dunking it straight in. This avoids shocking and cracking the egg. Here, another tip I saw was to use vinegar and to roll the egg around occasionally to avoid a strange shape and to make it easier to peel. But sadly, I did neither of these things, so it ended up with a slight dent in the bottom, but it was better than last time. I boiled this for 7 minutes to get a slightly jammy yolk, but you can change this depending on what kind of yolk you would like. Then I'm dunking it straight into a bath of ice water to stop the cooking process and to make it easier to peel. Now into a cup we're going to put all of our seasonings. So now we're going to finish off my soy sauce bottle with 4 tablespoons of soy sauce. Then add in 3 tablespoons of mirin. And this is optional, but I've also added a little bit of garlic paste. Then we're going to add our 250 milliliters of water and give it a stir. You don't have to do this in a cup, you can do this in a plastic bag, but remember that the egg will take on the shape of anything that it's put into, so if your plastic bag has wrinkles, then so will your egg.
This is a great base with some really standard ingredients, minus the garlic, sorry, I just love garlic. But you can do anything that you want with this. You can put all of the ingredients into a pot and then start stewing in some real bits of garlic or some real bits of ginger. You could even put some spices in it. You could put Worcester sauce in it. You could put Thai fish sauce in it. Try things out, experiment. Make your perfect ramen egg so that you can have your perfect ramen. And if that was anything that you didn't know, then give me a thumbs up and let's go on to the next one.
So how did our ramen egg do? Sadly, there's still a little bit of a dent in the bottom, and there's a bit of a white spot where the egg wasn't completely covered. This is why the egg needs to be fully submerged. But it still looks pretty good to me, so let's cut it open and see how the yolk did. Ah, perfect. There's just a little bit of runniness, but there's just a nice, jammy, gooey yolk. This one has been in the fridge for 24 hours. I would recommend not going any further than 3 days, and not going any lower than 3 hours. So let's see how they taste. Ramen eggs don't have to just go in ramen. Here I'm going to put them in some soba. Now I'm just going to pick it up with my chopsticks and oh, it's kind of hard to pick it up and okay, just put it back together, no one will notice. Now let's go on to our Tamagoyaki.
So for this one, we are gonna need a slightly special piece of equipment. And that's this, the Tamagoyaki pan. This is just a square pan, that's literally all it is. But this particular one has a really good non-stick coating, which is obviously very important when you're cooking eggs. And I have tried to make this in a normal frying pan once before and it didn't really work. So I would recommend buying one of these if you're trying to make a Tamagoyaki. I've put a link in the description below if you want to buy your own online, but if you've already got that all sorted, then let's get cracking.
For our Tamagoyaki, I'm starting off with some soy sauce. This is a bit of a special soy sauce with kombu inside, but you can also just use kombu dashi or normal dashi, as well as your soy sauce. In fact, dashi is completely optional. So, along with my 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, I'm also adding 2 teaspoons of sugar, as well as 1 teaspoon of mirin. Then to make sure that all of my eggs are okay, I'm going to crack them each separately into a cup before putting them into my mixing jug. Then I'm just going to give these a quick whisk with my chopsticks, and we should end up with a nice orangey yolky mixture. Then I'm going to grab some oil and kitchen paper. For Tamagoyaki, we want to keep the pan well oiled at all times, so I'm keeping my oil-soaked kitchen paper on hand nearby. Then, to check if the pan is hot enough, I've just added a couple of drops of the egg mixture. We want to keep this on about a medium heat. Once my egg droplets have started to cook a little bit, I'm going to start adding my mixture. So we're going to do this in layers. I ended up with 4 layers, but you can make it a little bit thicker and just do 3 if you want. So we're going to do a nice thin sheet, and we're just going to pop any bubbles that come up. At the beginning, I find it much easier to use chopsticks to grab the omelette, but you can just use a spatula. And for the first layer, the shape doesn't really matter. Just trying to get it into a bit of a roll is fine. Then once you finish rolling it towards you, push it to the other side and put down another layer of oil. Then when you're putting in the second layer of egg mixture, make sure to pick up the first roll so that the egg can go underneath. This means that the first layer and the second layer will stick together nicely, ending up with a nice spiral in the middle. We don't want to make this too dry, so keep an eye on the heat and bring it down if necessary. Then roll it again and repeat. Here I've switched to a spatula because it's getting a bit big, but I also want to just push it towards the sides so that we can get a nice uniform shape. Or as nice and uniform as possible. And now for the final roll. Now it's a nice fat omelette with a bit of a jiggle. There was a bit too much mixture on one end, so it's not completely uniform, but it still looks pretty tasty. And because it's still pretty hot, then I'm using a spatula to hold it whilst I cut it. And there you have it. 6 pieces of beautiful yellow tamagoyaki with some nice layering in the middle. This would go so well with some melted cheese.
So Tamagoyaki is probably the hardest one to perfect, but it's definitely a fun way to add some variety instead of just having a normal omelette. Now you can have a twisty, swirly whirly Japanese omelette instead. But anyway, I've had a lot of fun making a lot of Japanese egg recipes this week, and I'd like to say thank you to all of the chickens that made this possible. I hope that you've learned something, I hope that you've had a bit of fun watching this video, but that's it for today, so I'll see you next time. Bye!